All right, good. I like talking about this, so thank you for letting me to tell you about this. Um, I've really had a lot of fun with Stan Groff's view of the mind as a way of understanding arts and poetry and culture in general. So I want to start off by telling you about some of the things I've been able to think about with Snow White. We'll start off with a very broad scope of how I see this and then narrow it down. So we'll go to look at the psychedelic renaissance in general, and then at Snow White's view of Stan Groff's view of the mind in general. And then we'll go from there. This is an idea I'm working on now that is to see the psychedelic renaissance in four stages. And the stage that most of us are at now, or rather the field is the bottom stage of medicines, and that's biology, neuroscience, and psychotherapy. And that's obviously where almost all the interest is going right now. But I see this as just the first of several stages. And in psychotherapy, people are discovering, of course, that it's the mystical experience, sense of unity of consciousness, ego transcendence, that is the psychotherapeutic event. And this moves our culture up into the religion and spiritual development questions. That area is beginning to develop, not as much as the medicines, but some religions, as you know, are using psychedelics now. And the anthropologists have been very rich in this area. And as we're investigating religion and spiritual development, the questions of meaningfulness, love, the arts, transcendence, and so forth all come up. And this then boosts up to the next stage that I'm calling the social sciences, humanities, and the invention of paradigms to walk us through both particular fields. So then as we're studying those, we have to expand to still a much brighter idea of what psychedelics are. Rather than just see psychedelics as one isolated area by itself, I prefer to see it as one family among a whole village of different families, ways of influencing our minds, of actually installing different programs in our minds, not digital programs, but psychological and biological programs. And we have to see psychedelics as just one of the whole village. For example, there's meditation, the martial arts, yoga, various types of brain stimulation, all kinds of other things that are part of this whole much larger idea. So I see psychedelics as just opening us to a much larger view of the mind that looks at possible ways of using our mind, I should say our brain-mind complex in new ways. And it's possible by putting these together in new combinations to develop mind-brain states that have never been created before. Suppose, for example, we combine, let's say, deep meditation with a psychedelic drug and with a certain amount of direct brain stimulation. We will then create a brain-mind state that's never developed before. And this allows us to get in there, find out if it's good for anything or if it's just interesting. And there's a good chance, I think, that a lot of odd and rare, unusual abilities are rare and unusual because they don't reside in an ordinary mind body state, but are in these new states. So this is what I'm seeing this as the larger picture. Now we're going to concentrate on, let's see, oh, should have moved. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to narrow that down to look at the work of Stan Grof. And this is in the third humanities idea gen stage. This is a comment by two psychiatrists, both of whom have been active in psychedelics. He says that they say, and I think they're really quite right in this, that Grof has therefore perhaps seen a vaster panoply of human experience than anyone else in history. Now, this is quite something to say, you know, particularly by psychiatrists who have studied the human mind and are very advanced in their field. So what we're going to be looking at now is some ideas that Stan has brought to light, basically his view of the human mind. This is Stan on his late wife, Christina, on the left of the film. And on the right is Václav Havel and his wife, Dagmar. They have had a award that Stan and Christina won in the 1960s sometime. And this takes place in the main cathedral at Prague. This is the, if you know, the good King Wenceslas. This was good King Wenceslas Cathedral. Okay, this takes place in Prague. Stan, of course, originally was Czech and a friend of Václav Havel, and he was awarded this at that particular time. This is the main book that I'm drawing on. Stan has probably a dozen or a dozen and a half books. A Realms of the Human Unconscious was the original title. This is the book, by the way, that Robin Carhart Harris read and got him interested in psychedelics. He was looking from a Freudian perspective on the human unconscious as being the main part of our minds and wondered if there was a way to investigate it. And he got hold of Stan's book, which is a way to investigate it. The current title is LSD Doorway to the Numinous. It's identical for all practical purposes of the original. And we'll be looking at the view of the mind that comes from that. This is a view of the mind, the way I look at it. Being a psychoanalyst, Grof looks down from the top to the bottom. The abstract and aesthetic is the shallowest view. And that's when people think then they mean, quote, psychedelic, like art and bright colors and certain nouns. As we go down a step further into our minds, we get into the psychodynamic or personal history. This is basically what Freud and most psychotherapists look at. They wonder what happened in your life that gave you this perspective and feeling about the world. So that's the psychodynamic or Freudian stage. And much to Grof's annoyance at first, his patients started to report what they claimed was their birth. And that brought us down to the perinatal stage. Being a traditional psychotherapist, Grof thought, you can't remember your birth. Everybody knows that. And yet his patients kept on insisting on it and telling him things that he was able later to check about their births and find out, sure enough, it's possible for people to have perinatal memories, that are the memories of the fetal life and birth memories. And then beyond that is the transpersonal area. You notice the top three are all personal. That is, are things that have happened to us basically from gestation to now as individual persons. And Stan, again, much against his better judgment, thought that the transpersonal area couldn't exist. It was all just imagery, but his patients kept on telling him things that he was able to check out, and sure enough, was able to develop this 4-level view of the human mind. We're going to pay most attention to the perinatal level. There'll be a little bit, when we talk about Snow White, of abstract and aesthetic, a little bit of psychodynamic, mostly perinatal, and the perinatal will sort of blend into the transpersonal. So let's look at some more ideas here. This is going to be available online, so I won't read all these to you. The perinatal level has 3 stages that are parallel to the birth stage. And the first basically is the womb stage. For most people, most of the time, this is similar, let's say, to being in a hot tub or on a beach on a nice sunny day, relaxed, everything taken care of, and no problems. There's also a bad womb experience if the mother gets sick or does some drugs that are bad for the fetus. The next stage is the inset of contractions. And the fetus's experience changes entirely from this wonderful place where everything is taken care of to being trapped and with walls contracting around the fetus. Now, these experiences are in us all and are able to be tapped by our own psychological experiences from day to day. For example, if you're afraid of being like trapped in an elevator, or you have dreams of being trapped in or a boa constrictor, something squeezing you, and there's no possible way out. This is a BPM2 stage. My wife and I sometimes watch a movie, we'll look at each other and say, oh, a BPM 2, a BPM 3. And the BPM 3 is the struggle to the birth canal. In BPM 2, there's no hope of escape. You're trapped. It's a meaningless world. In BPM 3, you're moving through the birth canal, and there's an enormous amount of energy and struggle that comes out at this time. And we'll see these stages in Snow White as she goes through this. And the BPM 3 level is very rich and has a lot of energy to it. And this is the sense that you can struggle. If you keep going, you should be able to get out of the situation. And finally, stage 4 is emergence or birth. And this is the sense of success, Valhalla, everything happening just perfectly, of celebration. Let's say when a sports team wins a national game or something, the fans often feel a sense of stage 4, and of course the players and the others do too. So we're going to be looking partly at the transpersonal level. It has 3 parts: an extension of consciousness, 1 beyond the usual ego boundaries, and 2 beyond the limits of time, and 3 space. And we'll see these showing up in Snow White. And in transpersonal psychocriticism, that it uses this approach. Okay, here's the first, or one of the first slides on Snow White. We'll come back to some others later. Notice down here in the lower left-hand corner, those are psychedelic mushrooms. Rather, they are red mushrooms with white spots on them. You can't see them in this particular shot. Now, we don't know whether Disney intended to use psychedelic mushrooms in this, but they do show up and with spot mushrooms here and there through it. Like, notice this word mythopoetic reality. The idea here from Joseph Campbell and other people who have studied myths is that myths represent a very deep part of our minds. And of course, psychedelics are the way to get into our minds. And when you do psychedelics, we might tap into the mythopoetic reality. It's the level that poetry, myth, legend come from. And so we find in Snow White, we are going into the mythopoetic reality and this study of a young girl and her experience with mythopoetic reality. Joseph Campbell, who is like Mr. Myth and Symbol, tells us what we're going to be seeing in this movie. The passage of the mythological hero may be overground incidentally. That is, it's as if the story is going on in the outside world. And this applies not just to mythological characters, but in TV shows, movies, and so forth. Fundamentally, it is inward, into depths where obscure resistances are overcome and long lost, forgotten powers are revivified to made available for the transformation of the world. Now, this Campbell says, if we look at the main myths and symbols and stories in the world, those that maintain themselves from generation to generation, they'll have this more or less same story running through them. And we're going to pick up this story as we look at Snow White. And it seems like it's taking place basically, in the woods and whatever land Snow White is supposed to live in. But actually what we're looking at is an interior psychological story of her. And it's the story of her psychological development, not just the story of a princess. It tells us a nice story. And here's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. I'll have to lubricate my throat once in a while. Disney, every time the Snow White was released, and it wasn't always available, it was released either every 5 or 7 years. And in each release, the Disney people would have a new version of the book to accompany the movie. So here we see one of the early ones. I think this is actually 1950. Carl Jung, C.G. Jung, also had some ideas that help us understand this movie. The anima and animus are mixed and confused in this young girl's mind. The animus is generally the strong, powerful, weak, usually male person in myth, and the queen is usually weak and submissive. However, in the mind of Snow White, they've got the opposite roles. And we'll see these roles show up in some nice, powerful Snow White movies. There's the mean queen, okay? And she's being very dominant, and she determines what's going on in the world. I've read that this is supposed to resemble the actress Joan Crawford. I can see it. We'll see it in another slide. I wonder what Joan Crawford thought. Snow White was the young actress Jean Tierney. And here's the huntsman, who should be powerful, dominant, and very male, but he is weak and just does what the queen tells him to do. So we've got these two anonymous roles switched in the person of Snow White. Another characteristic is the persona. And that's the position that one likes to present to other people. The good part of oneself that we like to see in ourselves, that we like to present to other people. And of course, for the queen being vain, she wants to be the fairest one of all and asks the mirror if she is the fairest one of all. Yeah, what she doesn't want to be is the ugliest one of all, the shadow, the bad part of us, the part we like to hide from ourselves and from other people. And we'll see both of these show up in the Snow White movie. The seven dwarfs may equal the seven chakras. That is a deep part of our mind. In Tibetan Buddhist and Hindu psychology, the chakras are parts of our unconscious. Oh, by the way, notice down here, the mushrooms are appearing again. It's fun to spot these. Okay, so this represents a very, very deep part of our minds. And we'll see the character of Snow White getting down into that part of her mind. And they will help her. And she will help them. Okay, Joseph Campbell, who was really extremely well known for the study of myth and symbol, read the manuscript of Groff's book, Realms of the Human Unconscious, and found that Groff's view of the mind and Groff's view of the Campbells were the same map that appeared variously in Groff's psychotherapy of humans and Campbell's understanding of myth and symbol. And so these two fields come together. A third field comes together in this, and that's Huston Smith's study of world religions. And he and Campbell and Groff all come up with a similar view of the human mind. Huston Smith, of course, in religion, Campbell from myth and symbol, and Groff from human psychiatry. So this corroboration on the same type of map of the mind supports each other. Okay, here's Groff's cartography again. I'll show it every once in a while and let us know where we are along this line. Okay, the introduction to a mythopoetic state is very much like the beginning of what we would see in a standard introduction. Remember, the transpersonal area has three elements: beyond ego boundaries, beyond the limitations of time, and beyond the limitation of space. The standard way for starting a folk tale is once upon a time, a long time ago. So we've got different place, we've got different time, in a far off land, different place. There lived a whatever, beautiful princess, simple woodcutter, and we give somebody else to identify with. And if we watch the nightly news and the announcer came on and said, once upon a time, a long time ago, we know this is not today's news, but it's putting us in a mythopoetic state. And the mythopoetic state is the state that psychedelics often, but not always, among other things, can put us into. Danger. Okay. After viewing this presentation, you'll never again be able to see the movie Snow White or even hear it mentioned without these ideas infiltrating your mind. Parents, cover your children's eyes and ears. So let's get going. And here's the beginning. Once upon a time, there's one of the three. There lived a lovely princess named White. There's somebody to identify with. Now, we don't know We aren't told it's in a far-off land, but we'll see pictures to let us know that. And the wicked, vain stepmother, Queen feared that someday Snow White beauty would surpass her own. So here's a conflict built right in here. There's a standard Freudian conflict between the youth and elders. The youth admire the elders, admire the elders because they're powerful and get things done, and elders admire the youth because they have this youthful beauty and energy. So here we are with Groff. We're going to start at the top, the abstract and aesthetic. And this is the introduction to Snow White. That's happening so-called in real time. And there's the Queen. Around the mirror, you notice that those are the 7 zodiac signs. So suggesting some sort of occult power of some sort. And here we see also the beginning of self-examination. Now, Snow White, I'm thinking, is probably a girl who's about to go into womanhood and does the sort of things that junior high school and high school students often do. And we'll see the mirror, which is the beginning of self-examination, and the sort of view of the high school student looking in the mirror and say, am I beautiful? How is my hair? So forth. The well, looking into the unconscious, a very common image. The unity and love theme, the Princess and Snow White's song will come. Someday my prince will come. And birds and animals may be psychic and intuitive abilities. I wouldn't press that too hard, but it's a good possibility. There's the mirror on the wall. I read that when the movie Snow White first came out in 1938, actually December 37 and 38, that the mirror on the wall was so frightening that kids went screaming from the theater and wouldn't go back in, and they had to make it less frightening. If you see this, particularly if you see it on acid, you can really understand why it can be so frightening. It is a scary sight. It's something you don't want to see on an acid trip, unless you're in a movie for that reason. Now here's Snow White. She's supposed to be a scullery maid. The scullery is kitchen, but she's washing the steps. So that's her job, is just to work and do what she's told. And here's the prince on his great white steed. Notice the castle where Snow White lives is a big, powerful construction. Buildings often are used as images of somebody or someplace. So here's the wall keeping Snow White and the prince apart. And we'll see this image of the house changing throughout the film. Looking down a well, and let's say looking into her unconscious, Snow White has an image of her animus, her desirable animus, the prince, and herself looking up. And there they are at the bottom of the well, presumably in her unconscious, so she's not really consciously thinking about it. And they're together in the sort of perfect circle of unity, something to be hoped for, an archetypal image. And they meet each other. Snow White, who's quite shy this time, is attracted to him, but it's really too much for her. She flees into the castle, but she's interested. Okay, so we have this, let's say, 10-year-old girl who's getting interested in boys. And he sings a love song to her. She's really taken with this. Aha, what does the Queen think? Joan Crawford really looks angry at this point. Okay, and this takes us to the next stage, the psychodynamic stage. And we'll see it a little bit here. Again, this is just preparing us for the big perinatal part of the movie. Groff's second stage, the biographical, psychodynamic, or Freudian stage, the stage of what's happened to us from life until now. And we'll see in Snow White some adolescent development, a little bit of sexuality at the end, but not much, and conflict with the stepmother. There's that conflict between youth and old age, or youth and maturity. Well, the Queen doesn't like that. And so she tells the huntsman to bring back Snow White's heart in a box. How do you like that, Joan Crawford? And we move now into the third level. We'll spend a lot of imagery in here. The third level is a level that's usually developed in movies, stories, TV shows, and so forth, because it's very dynamic and there's a lot of exciting going on here. And it's a large part of most creative rights, creative stories take place in the BPMs, the basic perinatal matrices. This is Groff's diagram of the perinatal matrices. Of course, in life, it would be turned upside down. And there's BPM1 over on the left, the good womb, and we even have the fetus in there smiling. Oh, contractions start on the second womb, and the poor thing is just hurting, it's just awful. In the third picture, it's moving through the birth canal, and it sometimes is struggling, and sometimes it identifies with itself, and sometimes with the mother. So it's a two-sided conflict. And finally, in BPM4, we have the birth. And we'll go through these in detail. There's a close-up of the fetus in the good womb. Perinatal matrix 1. And this is characterized by primal union with mother. And whenever we have these feelings of no cares, relaxed, easygoingness, as I said, like being on a beach on a nice day, relaxing in a hot tub, happy moments from childhood, these stimulate these unconscious experiences from our own individual backgrounds. Vacations in beautiful natural settings, and we're going to see this in the next couple of slides. All this really good feeling, everything's taken care of, there's nothing to worry about, is a BPM1 matrix feeling. And we all can tune into those, assuming we all have had some good womb to tune into. There also is a bad womb, which is exactly the opposite. Okay, here's Snow White in BPM1. There's a beautiful flowery glade. The huntsman is there, but he's off on the side. We don't have to worry about him. She's picking flowers. This is the place you want to go on a picnic on a nice spring day, a very BPM type day, a nice sunny day. And she picks up a fledgling and puts it back in her nest. She's a fledgling out of the nest, but she doesn't know that yet. Now we start basic perinatal matrix 2. That's being trapped. Let me say, when you go through a tunnel, if you feel sort of claustrophobic, that's the BPM feeling. There's a big old post office on the way to Chicago. And when students drive back to Chicago, most of my students are from Chicago in the area, and they go under this big post office. I say, do you feel that sort of crushing feeling, the threatening feeling? 2 days ago, we had a tornado here, and we went down to the basement. That was a BPM2 feeling of everything going wrong and sort of crushing in on you. So here we're going to see some BPM2. And this is antagonism with mother, feeling trapped. For example, stories of, well, The Pit and the Pendulum is a perfect BPM2 story. Poe is very BPM2, very much that way. In an unbearable, inescapable situation. And this applies not only to physical things, but if you're in a job or a relationship that you feel you can't escape, that will bring out basic perinatal matrix 2 feelings of how do I get out of this? Is this never going to end? Oh God, now what? That's the BPM2 feelings. Uh-oh, here comes BPM2. Whoa, this is not somebody you want to meet on an alley in a dark night. And here she really is caught between a rock and a hard place. The beat and the huntsman bearing down on her. There's a great BPM2 expression. Disney is very good at portraying BPM2s and BPM3s in his films. Very, very good at this. Uh-oh, the huntsman can't go through with it though. He tells her that the queen wanted to kill her and to bring back her heart. And he tells her, go, 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 flee into the woods and don't come back. So she does escape BPM2. And when she starts fleeing, she moves into BPM3. That's the birth struggle, which is always a very complex Here we are, the BPM 3 birth struggle. I wish we would show the fetus struggling a little, baby struggling a little more. And this is synergism with mother, where you and the mother are struggling together. And these, of course, are really the meat of most movies and TV shows: struggles, fights, adventurous activities, intensification of suffering, the cosmic dimensions. In BPM 2, it's hopeless. You can't do anything about it. You're just a victim. In BPM 3, you think, I can struggle against this. See, there's a shift from no hope in BPM 2 to hope in BPM 3. But I can work on this. I can do something. And of course, movies and TV shows like Wild Adventures, Dangerous Explorations, and this will eventually get to dying and being reborn. So this is the stuff of action figures, action movies, and so forth. Notice she's going to the woods now. The woods are beginning to get dark and a little dangerous looking. Oh, see the tree on the left? It's like it's holding up a knife and about to come down on her. I mean, this is a scary bad dream, and she's stuck in this. And our girl heroine, who we're talking about here, Snow White, is beginning to understand and face a lot of struggle in life. Notice that the branches reach out and they grab her and they pull against her. This sense of being grabbed, attacked, is a very BPM 2 situation. Now, this is one of the later movies. Notice in this one, it's scary and she's frightening and she's running away. And here, they bowdlerized it down. They sort of made it not so frightening. And there's the owl up above, and there's some ice in the back. Well, this is not a real scary picture, not like the previous one. Okay, now here she is. Notice that the tree trunks have big, scary faces on them. This is what I mean. Disney is really nice at doing a BPM 2 and BPM 3. It's really wonderful artwork, cartooning. Look at that. That's not the little owl eyes we saw a couple of slides ago. This is some sort of frightening monster. And it's even worse. They're coming down on her. See, and this is terror. Now, this is from the 1937 or 38 book. I'll read, and it's very different from here it is 1937. She stumbled over a big root and fell. There was a roaring in her ears. She seemed to hear the huntsman crying, "Go, go, go," but she could go no further. She was so miserable that she didn't care what happened. She wanted to lie there and die. Now, in the later books, they didn't do this. They didn't leave out the death part. I think they tried to make it so that parents would buy the book, and talking about death to young children was just too, it didn't pay off, let's put it that way. So here we are now in BPM 3 again, and we're going to look at BPM 4. That's the last of the, notice over here in the corner now, the mushrooms are beginning to appear again. BPM 4 is birth, rebirth, a new day, dawning, sunrise, a happy new adventure, things that are going well, a sense of success. Everything seems all right with the world because of some achievement you've done. So here we see her, and we have all these little Disney-esque creatures around her. Now, I'm halfway able to say those are her intuitive and psychic abilities, because they do lead her that way. But at any rate, the frightening eyes that we saw a couple of slides ago turned into the nice bunnies and squirrels and deer and so forth. So what had been frightening now is no longer frightening. And she's gone through the death experience. There's Groff's picture of through the death experience, BPM 4. And this is separation from mother, fortuitous escape from dangerous situation. That's just what Snow White went through. We just saw natural scene, dawn, spring. a sense of rebirth, redemption, beautiful colors, appreciation of a simple way of life, occasional manic activities, and grandiose feelings. I'm assuming most people watching this have done psychedelic and know that feeling of occasional manic activity and grandiose feelings. Now we're going to see Snow White work through this aspect of her unconscious. Where do I go? She asks all the little intuitive creatures and birds. They take hold of her dress or gown or whatever it is and pull her along a little way. And she comes to oversee a bridge going over to a house. Over in the lower right-hand corner, again, are some of those mushrooms. They're more visible in the movie than in just these selective sides. But anyway, she's going to go across this stream and will be moving from the basic perinatal matrix level across into the transpersonal level. And of course, that's where the seven dwarfs live. So the transpersonal level, she will experience experiences going beyond her personal life, ego transcendence. And we'll see this in the house, which represents oneself. Remember, she's gone to this great, glorious, wonderful castle, this modest dwarf's house, simple living in the woods, cleaning, working on oneself, psychological growth, psychotherapy is what we're talking about here. She's working on herself. And at the end of this, we'll see her go into a very, very deep level of this level of her mind, the endless sleep and ego transcendence. This is a picture from a book on, there was a book on psychedelic mushrooms, a series of books for children called the Golden Guides. There's a Golden Guide to Butterflies, Golden Guide to Wildflowers. And they're basically little children's small books about that big. And somebody got them to do a Golden Guide to psychedelic mushrooms, or psychoactive plants. This was right at the time of the anti-drug rampage in the United States, and they pulled that off the shelf. But I happened to pick up 2 copies. And so this is an example of the psychedelic Amanita muscaria mushroom. The other one is an ordinary sort of grayish brown mushroom, and not so much a friend of artists for that reason. Okay, here she is, crossing over to transpersonal world, and here the mushrooms are waiting for her. She gets into the dwarf's house. And cleaning the house, we call it also doing psychotherapy, cleaning yourself, working on herself, doing psychedelic therapy or any other type of therapy. And there's a wonderful Disney song, Whistle While You Work. And this is one of the areas Disney also had a lot of fun with, just as a cine artist. And she's cleaning the house, meaning, let's say, working on herself, doing work that needs to be done. Even though it's sort of dirty work, she's very happy to do it. This is the picture from the 1939 book, or 37 book. She's cleaning the dwarf's house. Here, this is sort of, she's still sort of downcast about this. Not at all what we see here. So we've turned it into a rather happier event in the movie. There she is sweeping. See, this little rabbit and chipmunk helping her. Very, very Disney-esque. And this is the famous Whistle While You Work episode. Oh, she's tired. She's been working hard, doing a lot of self-growth in the house of the dwarves. Now, what are the dwarves? The dwarves, if we think of them as being representing the chakras are locations along the spine in some types of Hinduism and Tibetan Buddhism, and they represent levels of spiritual development. And it's because of hearing about the chakras that I got interested in Snow White and analyzing it. I was at a conference that the Menninger Foundation sponsored, and it was at a church camp way out in the middle of the prairie with nothing else around us. It was, we were there for a week, about 50 or 60 people, and sitting down at the table, like lots of conferences, It's where you chat with people, where the real business is done. And we got into the number 7 as being a lucky number. And it's the most popular lucky number. And somebody said that in myths and symbols, 7 often represents something good, something valuable, and said that in Snow White, the 7 dwarfs represent the 7 chakras. And I came home, and what should be playing in our local movie theater but Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs? So I went to see it. And in class at that time, we were reading Groff's book, Realms of the Human Unconscious. So all of a sudden, I was primed to look at this movie, reading Realms and having the idea about the chakras, and went to see the movie. And that's what gave me the idea of doing this analysis. My class met a couple of days later, and we adjourned to the local movie theater. A bunch of advanced freshmen. These were teachers and counselors in schools and colleges who were taking an advanced course in education psychology. So we showed up at our local theater, a bunch of pre-middle age and mature people sitting in the middle of the theater and sort of nodding and laughing and chuckling to each other. The people in the theater, I think, must have wondered, who are these people? But of course, I'm pretty glad to see us there. Okay, here's the mine. It's not an iron mine, it's not a coal mine, it's a diamond mine, or actually a jewel mine. And the chakras are often pictured as having a jewel in the center of each one. Now, I don't at all mean that Disney knew this and chose it for his purpose. He chose it because it felt right. And the thing about a good artist is they feel what's right, and the feeling often means they're in touch with a deep level of their unconscious. They do it because it feels right, not for any sort of theological or scholarly reason. So here they are working in the mine, and while Snow White has been cleaning their house. They march home. See the shrooms? They march home. They sing the version of the song that's seldom sung. Most people know, hi ho, it's off to work we go. But they're singing, hi ho, it's home from work we go. Next morning they'll sing off to work. But anyway, here they are coming home after a hard day at the mine. This is you see a Czechoslovakian stamp that has Amanita muscaria mushrooms on it. And the Eastern European countries have a very different view of mushrooms from most Western European countries. Western European with the exception of one kind of edible mushroom. And the people in the Eastern European countries and going into Russia generally admire and love mushrooms, and they have postage stamps with mushrooms on them. I was showing this to Stan Grof. I said, Stan, the reason you're interested in psychedelics is that when your mother was carrying you, she was frightened by his postage stamp. He said, not very likely. So anyway, here we are with the Czechoslovakian postage stamp of the Amanita muscaria mushroom. Amanita muscaria, of course, has it over the gray ones because they're prettier. Okay, they come home. Snow White has gone up to the bedroom and stretched out put a couple of beds together. She's bigger than them, and stretches out on the bed. And they come home, and they're astounded. What is it? Is it a dragon? Is it a ghost? What is it? It's a little girl. And they make friends with Snow White. All right. To work on her unconscious, on her chakras, Snow White is nourishing them with food and sets the table for them. They attack it like a bunch of Cub Scouts coming in after school with treats. Boy, I mean, nothing there. Oh boy, food, good fresh food and tasty food. Uh-oh. She's taking control of her chakras at this point. They're not controlling her. Not until you've washed and cleaned. Oh, they've never heard of such a thing. And there's a bunch of nice Disney movie stuff with the dwarfs at the trough. Notice the 7 dwarfs, there are only 6 at the trough. This is a lot of little Disney fun. Grumpy doesn't want anything to do with feminine wiles, and he's not going to get clean. So they pick him up. And he gets cleaned. Grumpy gets cleaned, whether he likes it or not. That evening, from a later book, of course, they play music and dance. This could be mudra and mantra. Whatever it is, she's getting along with them just beautifully. There's Dopey. The drummer is always the guy, the dopiest one. There he is, being dopey. The next morning, they're off to work, and Snow White wishes them well. She even kisses Grumpy on that forehead. He's not too happy about it, but actually it turns out to be kind of pleased. Bye-bye. Hi-ho, hi-ho, it's off to work we go. Okay, so the chakras are going to do their work in the mind. Snow White, meanwhile, wants to bake some. She says, I'll bake a gooseberry pie. Men love gooseberry pies. So she lines up all her spirits and guides, and she's making a gooseberry pie. Now, what about the heroine's shadow? Remember, we haven't talked about the shadow now for a while. This young girl has to face and overcome her shadow to be psychologically very solid. So this will appear as the witch, hag, peddler, the ugliest one of all, the shadow, exactly who the queen does not want to be. We see all the bad parts of her displayed. There's a castle in Transylvania you don't want to walk into on a dark night. Very different from that nice white castle we saw at the opening. The queen looks in the box. It's a pig's heart. She's been tricked. She asks the mirror, where is Snow White? And the mirror tells her with the dwarf's house. So the shadow part of this girl goes down into the worst part of her mind, the dungeon. Beautiful work here. These rats scurrying around, and notice the skeleton on the wall there. So what we are now is our young preteen girl becoming teenagers, getting in touch with her shadow and has to learn to control and experience that. She picks up a book of how to make a poison. Notice this really a nice balance over here. And the queen looks at this book of recipes on how to make magic potions, the peddler disguise, mummy dust, and so forth. I have a friend who's a psychopharmacologist, and she says these are historical symbols for very, like a pinch of this and something or other of that. And these are actually the ones that were used before we used current symbols. So there's the shadow, the bad part of the queen, mixing a drink. She holds it up to the light, lightning strikes it. And of course, psychedelics are often called electronized chemicals. And this, of course, is from a later book. Uh-oh, look out. Oh, she's having a bath. She's turning into the old, ugly, the ugliest one of all. There is a bad trip. There is a worse trip. And we don't know what's going on. There's a nice bit of Disney work here. Here's the shadow of the queen, hag, peddler. We can't quite see it. And so it's always possible to feel a little bit of scary fear when we see something we can't make out what it is. Am I the ugliest one of all? The loveliest one of all? No, the ugliest one of all. This is exactly what the queen does not want to be, what she's afraid of becoming. Now, back into the book, notice the nice skull here. One taste of the poison apple and the victim's eyes will close forever in the sleeping death, not the death, but a deep coma, a sleeping death. And notice the apple with it up here. The victim of the sleeping death can be revised by love's first kiss. Okay. So she dips the apple in this terrible brew, a beautiful gold, red delicious from the state of Washington. and she goes to Snow White. And she promises Snow White one thing or another, and Snow White doesn't want to have anything to do with it. Her senses tell her to beware. This is something to look out for and not be trapped. She's scared. See, her intuitive abilities there are frightening her. She's scared by the witch. Would you like this, my dear? See, the bird is dive bombing the witch. And Snow White is looking very questionable about this. And the birds drive her away. Her intuitive abilities drive the shadow character away. But she pretends to have a heart attack. That's or something, we don't know, but I'm just saying it's a heart attack because she has her hand up there. And Snow White, being a good person, has to help. Okay, so she helps the poor old witch, peddler, former queen in, and she gives her an apple saying, if you eat this, my dear, your favorite dream will come true. And of course, for Snow White, the dream was her prince that she saw down in her animus in the well. So she takes a bite. Look out. Clunk. She's out on the floor. Okay. The shadow is winning at this point. Meanwhile, back at the mine, the birds are trying to tell the dwarfs, the shoppers, something's wrong with Snow White, something's wrong with Snow White. And they think they've all gone crazy. They can't figure it out. Again, some nice Disney fun with this. Sleepy, okay, who, of course, was sort of slow in his mind, is the one who says, maybe something's happened to Snow White. Snow White. They gallop back again past the Shumi forest. They gallop back to rescue Snow White. In case you're wondering where the forest is, it's in Poland. Okay, they're galloping through the forest in Poland to save Snow White. There's the Shum again. Starts to rain. The peddler witch leaves, climbs up a cliff, and she's about to leverage this big rock. She says, I'll squash the little men. And lets down this big rock on top of them. Crack, rescue from without, which is something Joseph Campbell mentions at the end of the hero and heroine's journey. There's often some magic thing that shows up, a magic ring or a fairy or something magical will show up and save the day. And here, lightning saves the day. And the queen, we don't know what's happened to her, but there's a slide and it shows two vultures circling around. So we can figure that Snow White, the character, has integrated the shadow aspect of her into her life. So she's made a lot of growth during this movie. They think she's dead. Oh, how sad. Oh, all the little animals and birds are crying. They put her in a glass case in the forest. Who should show up? Da-da-da-da! But good old Prince Charming and his big white steed. And of course, love's first kiss is the cure, but it doesn't work at first. Well, it takes a while for love's first kiss to really work. Oh boy, she's wet. Whoa, look at that. She's alive. And celebration with all the little forest creatures too. See? Okay, here they are, anima and animus combining. And he takes her off and puts her on his horse. And they're right off through the eucalyptus grove to a great castle in the sky. Okay. I'm going to stop screen share at this point. Okay. There's Groffian psychocriticism. You can have a lot of fun with Groff's mind. Poetry, music, drama, everything so works with it. Now, I'm not saying that everything can be explained with Groffian psychoanalysis. There are a lot of other ways of analyzing things. But this is a very good start. And you can have a lot of fun with this. And it's a good way, actually, and some of you who are teachers may want to do what I do with my class after giving them the Snow White talk. And after they've read the perinatal chapter in Groff's book, I'd have them do their own analysis of something in their own lives. Maybe a movie, but maybe going on a vacation or being stuck or some problem they've had. I had one woman do it, much to my surprise, on buying a pair of shoes to go to an important dance. And she went through this, buying this wonderful pair of shoes in BPM 1. They hurt her feet, their feet felt trapped in them, and they hurt in BPM 2 and 3. And at the end of the dance, she took them off. So you can see this imagery all over the place. And it's a way to understand our own or your client's imagery. And this is not to say that this is the only way to understand this. There are lots of other ways of doing psychocriticism. But I think Groffian psychocriticism is a direction that really needs to be looked at and is a fun to look at. So